Yeah. Well, we went to Smith and Wesson, and everyone's like afraid of it, and I don't want to shoot it, and they were shooting 44 specials, and I sauntered up because I'm an old Model 29 shooter, and I said, oh, let me see that. Loaded that sucker up with, buffalo boar, something.
Yeah.
They had the targets in close, reached up, bam, 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 bam. I let fly with it. It's a pretty good group. I put it down. I went, well, that's not bad. And I went over in the corner there. My hand was shaking. I couldn't talk. I was tearing up. I had to go to the bathroom.
Well, hi there. Welcome to another episode of The Gun Cranks. We've got a full house today. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, along with Tom McHale, the editor of American Handgunner. You've got Eric Gelhaus, the editor of AmericanCop.com, and Roy Huntington, gadabout, man about town, a great private citizen, private pilot. Yeah. And he's our special assignments editor.
Hey,
so,
you're a pilot?
Hey, guys. No, but
I
was just trying to come up with an honorific for him.
Brett watched American movie classics before we started recording this.
Exactly. Well, thanks for joining us on the Gun Cranks. Today we're going to talk about something that should be rather interesting. It is your best shot ever. And, I've been shooting a long time. I've made some shots I was pretty proud of. I've made a lot of shots I wasn't proud of. But when we were getting ready to get this thing started, I said, I've got a story. Because when somebody asked me, best shot ever, I can tell you I bagged a true trophy. I was on the range, on the square range. We were testing, or not actually testing. A buddy of ours had a Ruger Mark IV suppressed. And he brought it out, so we're doing our thing and we're trying it out. And across the square range, Chip or Dale popped up in the grass. And the range master, the owner of the range, who is well known in the industry and all of us know him, he was rather protective of his ground squirrels and flora and fauna. And you're sitting there with a couple of buddies, he's not there, you've got a suppressed 22, and this little rodent pops his little head up, and he's just flitting about. Now, we're diagonal across the range, so...
Taunting, probably, right?
Exactly. That's what I turned to the guy who owned the gun, and I said, he's just begging for it, isn't he? He goes, do it, man. Do him. Do the rodent, man. So I lined up with the suppressed 22, and I took the first shot, and you saw him kind of like, what was that? Because we're talking, I don't know, 40, 50 yards probably. So I was proud that I even came close to him. And, he's kind of like, well, So he kind of scampered, and I lined up again, and I center punched him. And it flung him up in the air, and I was pretty proud of that. Now, it was a needless killing, absolutely, but as I tried to explain later to the irate range master, I said, he was out there tearing up your range. I did you a favor. No, leave those alone. So I didn't send him the trophy pictures that we did that were like Teddy Roosevelt holding a little fella's ears up with that big hole in his center. But truly, a 22 offhand, again, 40, 50 yards, probably closer to 50, the best shot I've ever made. So, gentlemen, nice. There you go.
And with witnesses, which is usually pretty rare.
Witnesses are key.
Yeah. Otherwise, it never happened. And
I've still got the picture of me holding him up.
my most important shot ever, because the reputation of American Handgunner magazine was on the line. I had witnesses too. We were at a shooting event. And a bunch of us, probably about a dozen of us were there, and we're all shooting staccato pistols. And I already made the transition to optical sights, and all of the guns but one were geared up with red dots. And I ended up with the iron sight version, right? So we go through all this class. I think Todd Jarrett was leading this thing. And the end of the day fun, there's always got to be a competition when you get a bunch of gun writers together, right? We start doing the walk back thing with an 8-inch steel plate. at the end of the range. We started at 20 yards or so, and everybody would shoot, and if you hit it, you got to go back another 5 or 10 yards, right? So this is going on and on. I'm doing pretty good. I'm hitting the plate with my iron sights. We end up, there's, I don't know, 3 people left, and one of them is yours truly. We're at 120 yards, right? I got iron sights on mine. The other 2 guys got red dots. And sure enough, even though I shoot with both eyes closed, I hit the plate.
I love that when it happens in front of gun riders.
American Handgunner is a legit magazine, at least because of dumb luck.
There's always a lot of pressure when you show up at an event like that, and they go, you're from American Handgunner. Other than the fact that most gun riders can't really shoot worth beans. Oops, was that my outside voice just then? I apologize. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. Well, you know, Brent, not too long ago, you and I did was it a Gun Cranks or a podcast? It was about the 6.5-inch Model 29 44 Magnums.
Oh, yeah, it was a podcast last week or the week before.
Yeah. Well, it got me thinking about, and I was kind of reliving my youth with that, but we used to shoot at this pistol range, and we had a kind of a casual weekend combat pistol match thing going on. People would just show up and have fun. And we had guys with single actions in low-slung Western holsters, and we had some Nimrod show up with a Mauser broom handle one time. But it actually worked. It was actually really interesting. So you really never knew what was going to show up. And the guy who used to devise the courses of fire was this nefarious, evil, ne'er-do-well. And so the courses of fire would always involve jumping and rolling and climbing and carrying another shooter 40 yards. And I mean, it was just, you never knew what bizarreness was going to happen. And so he had this particular match. It was all real close in tight targets, 5 yards, 3 yards, 8 yards. And so we're all feeling pretty cocky. And I'm shooting my 6.5-inch Model 29, which I knew my way around pretty well. And so all of a sudden, he unveils the final stage, and it's a 300-yard torso target. And we didn't have steel in those days. So it was just what do we call them? B-25 silhouette targets, like used for PPC shooting, and so that was set up there. And there was some poor guy hiding behind a berm out there because he had to run out and change the targets every time. And that was funny because he would peek up over the top and he'd wave his arms, and it's like, okay, nobody's shooting, right? And then he'd run over real quick, put him another target, run back behind the berm. Anyway, so people are doing, I think you got 5 shots at it, and so pretty much nobody's hitting it. These are guys that don't really shoot usually more than 10 or 15 or 20 yards. And so I walked up and I just went, it's kind of like, Tom, it was like you. I just stood up, threw that old Model 29 out, took a little bit of front sight up, squeezed the trigger off, put it back on my holster and turned around. And I just thought, if there's a God, there will be one bullet hole. And I wasn't going to waste any more shots, right? And so the guy up there goes like this, stop. He runs back out again. I see he gets to the target and he stops. And he turns around and he looks back at us. And then he looks at the target again. And then his hand goes up and I'd hit it right in the middle of the head. Wow. I know. So
all
this big
planned.
44 caliber. Yeah. And of course, I went like, what? Yeah. But of course, then, like anything, like any bunch of cops or something, you had to survive the derision and the, obnoxious obscenities that were thrown at you afterwards. So I think that's my best shot. So.
Excellent. Well, Eric, top that.
Yeah, Eric.
I can't. Early on, no. Early on when I had a red dot, we had a pepper popper set up probably 80, 85 yards on our department range. And I was out screwing around one afternoon during an instructor update. We were just in between drills. And one of the guys like, can you hit it? I don't know. Present, line up the dot on the center part of the pepper popper, press the trigger, and for once in my life, I got a clean straight to the rear brake. Clang. Holster. Walked off the line. We're good.
Our work here is done.
They're like, you're not going to do that again? No.
Yep.
Actually, you know what? You bring up a very good point, because I was at an event at Gunsight one time, years and years ago. It was with Smith & Wesson. And I said beforehand, I said, bring all your J-frames that you're making now. I think we should shoot J-frames. And because people carry them, but they don't shoot them a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so we got there, and so we were shooting at 25 yards, and then 40 yards, and then 50 yards. And I said, you know, there was like 100 and a 200 and a 300 steel torso. And so I said, well, let's shoot at the 100 and the 203. And it was so funny, because Paul Pluff at Smith & Wesson, he was there then, and he was like going, well, you're an idiot. There's no way in the world but these guns won't shoot like that. You know, this is a big waste of our time and all. And I said, well, let me try. Well, see, he didn't know I had been practicing this kind of stuff before. So sure enough, you get like one ranging shot, so you know where this particular gun's shooting, and you squeeze really good, and it goes bang, clang. Of course, and then they all go, oh, yeah, you asshole, you know, yeah, try to do it on 200 yards. And you know how it is. I'm sure you guys have done it. You just a little more front sight, just take your time and squeeze. Takes 1 or 2 shots, and you can get on target, you know.
Yep.
And then even a 300-yard target, I wouldn't have wanted to been standing there, you know.
Yeah.
That's funny. And you know, Tom, you brought up a good point that we've never really discussed, but it's absolutely true. All 4 of us have done this. When you go to a media event, and it's all the folks you know in the industry, all
Yep.
the editors, sometimes guys you've been reading yourself for years, that kind of heroes, and then there'll end up being kind of a shoot-off or some kind of thing that lends itself to competitiveness. And it's on like Donkey Kong. And
Oh, yeah.
I will say, I don't want to break my own arm patting myself on the back, but we generally hold up our end of the bargain. So we don't want to let our readers down, that we generally do pretty good. And okay, I'll have to say this. Roy's absolutely right. There's some guys that are not real good shooters. Now they may, what I've found though is a lot of times guys may be a really good rifle shooter and an awful pistol shot, or
Yeah.
a really good shotgunner and a terrible rifle shooter or whatever. But we hold our own. So
You don't have to win, but you gotta be up there. You gotta be in the running.
Yeah,
right?
just be consistent, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you brought up a
Right.
good point too, is that I found most pistol shooters can shoot a rifle really well. Because I've been at media events where people say, oh, you know, I shoot pistols. I don't really shoot rifles that much. But you hand them a rifle and they know how to pull the trigger. And it's like,
Yep.
ting, 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 you know.
Yep.
I can't remember who it was, but I can remember reading one of the guys who was writing back in the 60s and 70s talking about that very thing, that pistols carry over to shooting rifles, but it doesn't come back the other way.
No, almost never. If you're I go hunting every year with my 30-06, I know all about shooting. It's like, oh, really? Here, shoot this pistol. You know, ping, pling, pling,
Yeah.
pling, pling, pling.
Well, I'll tell you a great competitive story that happened about 2 or 3 years ago. I was at a media event, and we were shooting revolvers, and we were shooting big bore revolvers. So they brought out the 460s, and I think there was a 500. There's a Casull, all this stuff. And then there was some other stuff. And guys were shooting all those, and they're like, well, you want to try and shoot the big guns? I'm like, well, sure. So I shot them, and then somebody said, well, that really hurts my hand. Doesn't it hurt your hand? No, of course not. So then it was, you know,
How dare you?
no,
accuse
you got some overpressure stuff. By the time I was done, I was suppressing the tears, but at least among my peers, like, that didn't bother me at all. But yeah.
Do you remember when Smith & Wesson introduced the Scandium 29? It was a 329, is that what it was? Yeah, it was this, I don't know what it was, 8 ounces
Awful.
or some silliness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we went to Smith & Wesson, and everyone's like afraid of it, and I don't want to shoot it, and they were shooting 44 specials, and I sauntered up because I'm an old Model 29 shooter, and I said, oh, let me see that. Loaded that sucker up with, you know, buffalo bore, you know, something.
Yeah.
They had the targets in close, reached up, you know, bam, 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 bam. I let fly with it. A pretty good group. I put it down. I went, well, that's not bad. And I went over in the corner there. My hand was shaking. I couldn't talk. I was tearing up. I had to go to the bathroom. I mean, it was just, that was not my best shot ever.
Yeah.
So.
The things you do for the reputation of the magazine, right?
I know, yeah. Because they come up afterwards, they say, wow, Roy, you really handled that gun. It's like, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Well, I think, wouldn't you guys agree, there's one critical tip to making the best shot you've ever made. And it's not just trigger press or any of that, follow through, all that. It's not looking stunned and surprised. Because
Yeah, it's true.
when you make that shot, and you need to train yourself for this, when you
the
make that
hell?
shot, you got to do that. That's how you do
Holster
it, son.
the gun and walk away.
Walk
Thing.
away.
That's it. It's holster the gun and walk
Yeah.
off.
Guess it was
Exactly.
a little
Never gonna do it
wide.
again.
You know, yep.
And the
go.
corollary to that, the opposite, and guys that do a lot of competition have seen this. The best way to screw somebody up, walk up, man, you are really great, and I'm just amazed at how good you're shooting, and I'm going to stand here and watch you. It's the rare human
right.
that can survive that. So
I got to go to lunch now, right?
Well, the best shot ever. It's truly though, and I don't mean to get too profound, but it's the last shot. I always have fun shooting, even when I'm not having fun shooting. I get back to the house, I get everything cleaned up, I get the stuff put away, and I wouldn't mind being back on the range shooting some more. Wouldn't you guys agree?
It's true.
Yep.
Even a 22 in your backyard or whatever you're doing. It is.
Yep.
It is. You're exactly right. Wait, you know what the other important thing is?
What's that?
Always lie about it.
Yeah, a lack of witnesses is a good thing.
If you
You
have
just
no
destroyed the
witnesses-
credibility of this entire episode. Right here.
We all had
Delete
witnesses,
this one.
of course. Yeah.
Well,
Hey, can I
again,
say though? If anybody listening has had an exceptional shot, and post it because I'd like to hear
Sure.
about
Let's hear it.
And
Yep.
if it's a lie, tell a really good story, and then at the end say, if you believe that, you're an idiot, right? But I want to hear good stories and true stories.
you know what?
And lies.
Let's go one further. People leave comments, or you can reach Tom and I at editor@gunsmagazine.com or AmericanHandgunner.com. Tell us your best shot ever, and the more outrageous and live-filled it is, the better. And we'll do like the top 5 on a Gun Cranks episode. How about
good
that?
idea. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, I like
Yeah.
it. That's
So
excellent.
basically, we're asking for the Liars Club. People accuse shooters of not
Fish
telling the
stories.
truth ever, which is kind of true. So this is it. Dust off your best lie, your best
That's a great idea.
prevarication, your best exaggeration, and let us know. And one of these days soon, we'll do the best of improbable hits. We'll maybe call it
Yes.
that. So,
Yep.
Dear
Very
Guns
cool.
Magazine, I'm a student at a small
small
Midwestern
Midwestern
college.
University. That's another episode.
Cut him off. We're going.
Yeah, we're done. So, anyway, gentlemen, it's been great. This has been fun. As always, make sure you check out AmericanCop.com, GunsMagazine.com, AmericanHandgunner.com, the Gun Cranks audio podcast if you're not watching us on YouTube, and the Guns Magazine podcast. And we've got our special editions. We've got the Smith & Wesson special edition and the DIY special. You can get those
Well,
on...
DIY's coming. Surplus is out now.
Oh,
You can order
okay,
that.
yeah.
If you want to
That's
hear
right.
cool stories about doing things like shooting machine guns from airplanes and how that all started, get yourself a copy of
Yeah.
the Surplus edition.
There you go. I didn't know that story was in there, so I'm going to have to pick me up a
It
copy
is.
too. So.
It's fun.
That'll
Lots of
be
pictures.
great.
So it'll work for you.
Exactly. Well, we thank you for joining us, and don't forget, send us your most outrageous shooting lie, and on an upcoming episode of Gun Cranks, we will talk about them. So, on behalf of Tom McHale, Eric Gelhaus, and Roy Huntington, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. We'll see you next time on the Gun Cranks.
Bye, Mom.